Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Alex and this is TechFlow. Proper deep video for me today because ever since the dot, I've been into these. Now surely you know what these are. This is an 11 Black from GoPro and these are action cameras and they haven't really changed in a while. The only thing they can really make better with them is a bump in image quality and maybe the battery life. Until today, Insta360 released this, the Go 3, and funnily enough, it looks a lot like a GoPro until you click this little button on the side and you see that it can do this. For the past few weeks, I've been putting this camera through its paces, taking it to festivals, getting some cool shots, and now I'm ready to give you my thoughts on it. So right off the bat, the Go 3 really is an awesome little versatile camera. But the main thing is, when it's in its little house, it really resembles a GoPro Hero 11. So if you're on the fence, what would you pick up? What would you add to your inventory? Today's video, we're gonna find out. Let's start this with category 1, portability. So the main thing about these action cameras, realistically, is to be able to get a camera or a shot in a place where you couldn't usually put your phone or a bigger camera. When the Go 3 is in its case, it really does resemble the same size as a GoPro. However, when you take it out, and yes, this thing can be used by itself on its ones without the case, this is when the differences really shine. The main one is with the weight. The GoPro weighs 155 grams, whereas the Go 3, just the lens only, comes in at only 35 grams, which is bonkers. When the camera's out of its case compared to the industry leader, the GoPro, it's less than a complete inch in width, which is bonkers, and half an inch in depth. This thing is really, really small compared to its competition. Now, over the past few months of using this camera, the size of it has shone in a couple of locations. The first is where you can actually put this. We've done some really cool shots, I don't even know what you call them, through shots, where you are on a slider literally going through an object to reveal something. With a GoPro, it would simply be too big, whereas this, you can get really, really close to objects like flowers and trees and so on and so forth and pull off some really cool shots. Another area of my life, which I noticed how small and cool this thing was at Lost Village Festival. I was in there dancing to the music and I got some great footage simply just by holding this thing in the air. And because it is so small, you can hold it and you don't really realize that you're holding a camera. The difference between this and this, even though they are both quite small, is staggering. You can feel this in your hand, whereas this, you can't even really feel it at all. So the winner of the portability category without any thought goes to the Go 3. It's portable even when it's in its case, and when it's out, it's a completely different monster. Category 2, the displays. For this, we'll start out with the GoPro, because in my mind, they have overcomplicated this a little bit. Yes, you can buy this camera and you have a nice big screen on the back for when you're filming things in front of you. But a lot of people nowadays like to turn the camera around and film themselves, especially with these action cameras, and it's really important that you frame your shots. GoPro thought about this, but overthought it by putting a really small screen on the front, which has a weird aspect ratio and isn't touchscreen. If you want to change the settings on this, they have to be done on the back screen. And obviously it goes without saying, having two screens on burns into your battery life. I'm not sure why GoPro haven't taken this method on board. However, a flip-up screen on the Insta makes this really, really versatile because you have a full screen in front mode and when it's in the rear too, which makes it super easy for not only monitoring yourself, but changing the settings if you are in front of the camera. So it is important to note that GoPro do offer a screen, and you have to get what's called the media mod, which will set you about £85, and then the screen as well, which is another £80 to £85, just to get a full-on screen, which flips up so you can see yourself filming yourself. This screen isn't touchscreen though, so you still, if you want to change the settings, have to reverse the camera around. Kudos to GoPro though, because this entire thing is waterproof and drop resistant, whereas I wouldn't really want to do that with the Go 3 because the hinge is a hinge. It's a mechanical part, it can break, and also it goes without saying, because this has a hinge, the actual case, the full body of this thing isn't watertight, but the actual camera itself is, So this bit is waterproof and this bit isn't. So as far as the displays, there's definitely pros and cons to each. You've got the flip-up display on here so you can see yourself, yet this thing is completely waterproof by itself and is really, really rugged. So this round takes the tie. And I'm not here to tell you which one is better, I'm just laying the cards out on the table so you behind the camera in front of your screen can make the choice yourself. Moving on to category 3 now, mounting options. So with the Insta360 GO 3, you basically only need the 3 included mounts. Not the full case, but the camera itself out of the case has a magnet built in, so you can basically stick it to anything metal, your car, or anything you fancy. You can also put it on a chest mount. It has an easy clip for things like hats, so you can get like a first person view, which looks really cool. And with this same clip, I actually managed to put it on my dog Atlas's collar and got some really awesome shots of him running around the garden, and that was really, really fun. Again, something I don't think you could really do with a GoPro just because of the sheer size of it. My dog Atlas didn't even realize that this was here after about 10 seconds. Now, Insta have thought of their own quick mount, quick release system, and it is on both the actual case itself and the camera. So it has these 2 tiny little clips either side. Again, same on the case. And then you can attach things to this, which will then give you different types of mounts. For example, a normal tripod mount, and you can even switch it out to a GoPro mount if you really want to go over to that dark side. And by dark side, I mean this camera's dark and this one's white. Now, as far as the GoPro is concerned, and honestly, I've got to give credit where credit's due, they have had the same mounting system, I think, as long as I've ever owned GoPros. So over 10 years. And the fact they haven't changed with it and have stuck with it, yeah, I've got to give that credit. However, I think it is getting slightly outdated. For the GoPro, you have to pull down these 2 little, I don't even know what you'd call them, little flaps on the bottom of the camera, and they are definitely the camera's weakest link. The other issue with the GoPro mounts is they're quite bulky. So obviously this, with the camera by itself, can literally be magnetized to something. It's really, really tiny. But by the time you've got 2 or 3 GoPro mounts attached to this, you can imagine that this is starting to almost be bigger than a point and shoot camera that you could fit in your pocket. At the end of the day though, both of the mounting systems on these cameras will do you fine. You will get these cameras mounted. However, I just think because the Insta360 GO is newer and they have had a fresh set of eyes on the mounting system, it's slightly more versatile and brought more into the 21st century. Moving swiftly on to, I think, the most important category, image quality. So image quality is a really subjective thing, and I'll start out this section by saying if you want the camera that has the best image quality, the GoPro is the one to get. Now on your screen now, I'm not going to reel them out, you can see the specs and the frame rates between these 2 models, and I'm going to tell you what I've found whilst using these things over the last few months. So when I took the GO 3 to a local festival, the footage in the daytime was absolutely unreal. But as soon as the sun started to drop below the horizon, there wasn't as much light available to get into the tiny little lens of this camera, you really see the image start to crumble a little bit. I also noticed that because of GoPro's years of color science, the colors and the actual image that you get out of the GoPro is slightly better than that you would see on the GO 3, but I only noticed these tiny little inconsistencies when viewing on a larger screen. I think the majority of the time when you're getting clips from cameras like these, you're going to be sticking them up on social media, up on YouTube, sending them to your friends over compressed WhatsApp messages, etc, etc. You get the point. The image is pretty indistinguishable until, like I mentioned, you start to get into lower light as to where the bigger image sensor on the GoPro really starts to shine. Simply because of physics, it can let in more light. Now, as far as the frame rates are concerned, if you're after slow motion recording, again, the GoPro is the one to go for. You can do here 240 frames per second at 1080p, which is really cool. At 1080p on the Insta360, you are stuck at 120. And this is basically down to all the processing happening inside of this little thing, not inside of here. They haven't got the space for it. But as I've mentioned, if you are a pixel peeper or a frame rate manic, you definitely want the GoPro because it can do 5.3K 10-bit recording, which again is only really possible with this just because of the sheer size of it. But again, this is all a personal preference thing. You've seen the side-by-sides of the image quality. If you want the versatility of this and you're happy to sacrifice a few pixels on your screen, then go for this. If you really are pixel peeping, go for the GoPro. Now, moving on to section 4, stabilization. Now, this is a really important category, especially for an action camera, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to be mounting this somewhere which will be shaking. Whether it's on the bonnet of your car or on the end of a pole, it will need some smoothing. So each company obviously both have their respective naming schemes for their stabilization. GoPro are using the Hypersmooth 5.0. So they've been through 5 iterations of this throughout the entirety of the time they've been making action cameras, so it should be pretty good. Over on the Insta, we call this flow state. Now, both the stabilizations work really well. You can see visually here that I'm shaking both of the cameras slightly, and on screen now you can see a side-by-side of what is coming from both of these cameras. Again, you can make your own choice here. I don't think there really is much in it, so this category for stabilization again is going to be another tie. Moving on to category 5 now, we've got the battery life. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting because you've only got here one battery for the GoPro, and the great thing is about this system is that you can take the batteries out and swap them. So as soon as this thing dies, you've got another one charged up in your bag, you drop it in, you're good to go. It's not the case with the Insta, unfortunately. The battery is sealed in and you've actually got 2 separate batteries here. There's a small little battery inside of the camera portion and then another battery inside of the actual main body. Now this is where it gets really kind of cool. You don't actually plug this in to charge it. It charges just by sitting in the housing, and then you basically charge the Insta Go 3 with a USB-C cable, same on the GoPro. So as long as the lens or the camera is in the body and it's on charge, they will both be charging together. So what's the battery actually like on the Go 3, considering this thing works by itself and it's really, really small? So out of the case, this thing by itself will give you about 45 minutes. However, it does top up really quickly once it's in its case. When it's in the case, Insta360 are claiming 173 minutes. I've managed over 2 hours with this camera when it's been in the case, which is really nice to see. The GoPro, however, one full charge gets you just over an hour claimed, and in testing, you probably get about 50 minutes to an hour. As I've mentioned, the good thing about the GoPro is the hot swappable batteries. However, I would like to mention that you only get one battery when you buy a GoPro, so if you want to buy more, there will be an added cost. And speaking of the cost, category number 6, the price of these devices. What are you needing to shell out? So with the Go 3, it's first off really important to note that you don't need to buy any external storage for this thing, not even a micro SD card, because the storage is built into it. So if you want 32 gigs, you're looking at $379.99. 64 goes to just shy of £400, and all the way up at 128, you're looking at $429. And all of these prices include the magnet neck case, all the easy clips, the pivot stand, and the lens guard. Over on the GoPro, it's $349 one charge for this thing. With the GoPro, you basically get one battery, you get a curved sticky mount, you also get the mounting buckle and no SD card, so you're gonna have to buy some extra things to this camera so you can actually record with it. So all in all, with everything laid out on the table, what are my thoughts? I really like this Go 3. I think it's a really, really fresh take on the action camera. I love the wireless nature of it. The fact that, and I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet, the fact that you can take this out of the case and it will then wirelessly transmit the video feed back to this, so you can use it as a wireless camera. You could have this mounted on the outside of your vehicle whilst you're monitoring the shot on the inside, which is really, really awesome. So I think the wrap up is this: if you can mount a GoPro into or whatever you are doing and you're after the 100% best image quality from an action camera that's rugged and has no compromises, then the GoPro is the way to go. However, if you're more of a versatile shooter and you don't really know what you're going to be shooting, you want the option to point and shoot, you want the option to selfie shoot, you want the option to mount a tiny little versatile camera in unthinkable places and then stick it back in here when you're done, this is the camera to go for. And that is basically the be all and end all of this review. All the cards are on the table, so now it's over to you. Let me know which one you decide to go for in the comment section down below, guys. But for now, my name's been Alex, this has been TechFlow. And yeah, with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.